Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Billable Hour. My name is Flora and I work in the commercial and property team at FCW Lawyers.
And I'm Tom, and I work in the litigation and the employment team.
And we're joined today by Andrew Douglas, our managing principal. We thought it'd be a great opportunity to have Andrew on and ask a couple of questions so that you guys can see what a managing principal looks for.
Yeah, and I'm excited to hear what the questions are.
Yeah, hard hitters.
All right, Tom, do you want to get us started?
Yeah, so the first question, Andrew, that we want to know about is, I know that you had, sort of an interesting road into the legal profession. You had multiple things that you tried before, like nursing, I believe. You also were in art school, if I'm not mistaken.
Chef at the stage.
Yeah, so quite worlds apart from where we now find ourselves. I'm just wanting to know how or why you decided to make that switch, and what motivated you to get into law.
Yeah, look, my switch came when I wanted to go back and study again. I was a really poor student at school. And when I started studying, I was invited to go into the law school by a couple of people, and it just clicked. Suddenly what I was doing all made sense to me for the first time in my life. And I realised, and thereafter it's been the same. It's something just that I like doing.
Interesting. Do you think do you find any of those skills that you've learned in those other sort of pursuits help you?
I think just like the two of you have worked in a whole lot of different jobs while doing law and even before law, knowing people makes it a lot easier to listen. You learn to shut up and listen. You learn to understand what people's appetite for risk is, what their financial reserves are, how willing they are to have a fight or not have a fight. And you also know what is the best outcome for them by listening to them. So people without that experience are inclined to be a bit clinical and a bit linear and actually miss the point of the game, which is delivering a valued service to a client.
Yeah, I think also those sort of like working in many different industries helps you relate to many different walks of life.
It does.
When you're talking to clients and things like that.
Yeah, and you've been knocked around, so you know what bad looks like as well.
Yeah.
Thanks, Andrew. What do you look for in new grads? So you can just describe Tom and I here.
I look for Tom and Flora. I'm looking for people who, I don't particularly like the word, but are authentic. We want people to be their best version of themselves, not cutouts of somebody else. So I want someone who's got character. I want someone who listens, someone who's inquisitive, someone who's committed. And commitment could be, Tom might have strong views or values on something, but if he's committed to it, I like it. But if I find someone without a view, I wonder how they're ever going to advocate. And I guess the other part is that they're committed to being a good person, broader than being a lawyer. I think people who just want to be a lawyer don't create a lot of value for people, often create a lot of cost for them. And they don't get the love and the passion out of it that I want you to enjoy, but also as a firm, what we enjoy doing. So that's what I'm looking for. Yes, I like both of them.
I think a concern for a lot of new grads is having to provide their transcripts. Is that something you look at?
Look, I do look at the transcripts, but I then listen to the story. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because I need talent. So if I've got someone with all pass grades, it's going to be hard to convince me you're an incredibly clever person who's talented. But it's common that I meet people who worked full-time jobs, did law, had whole lots of things happening in their life, but very quickly, even without doing any psychometric testing, you know the person's clever and talented, and you're providing them an opportunity to be away from that distraction. And if I look at the two of you, both of you have achieved extraordinarily since coming here, and your transcripts would suggest you were going to, but they mightn't be the sort of thing that a first-year firm would have said, look, you're not straight HDs, we don't want you. But if you had the time and opportunity, you would have been. So I think, you've got to measure things based on life, not on a piece of paper.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That is a good point. I know my transcripts certainly weren't all HDs.
But remember the other part, that part of our strategy, we engage you before you graduate.
Yep.
So both of you were here for a significant time before you got to graduation and admission. And part of that is us understanding, do you really have it? And then for you, is it really what you want to do? Because most intellect is latent. It's not visible. If you're not loving what you're doing, it doesn't actually demonstrate itself. It's only when you start doing something that you're passionate about that latent intellect explodes out and you see the high performance. But to do that, you've got to be in a high performance culture doing stuff you love.
you've had a long career at this point. What would you say have been the main challenges from a legal perspective?
No,
not so much.
Dealing, I'm competitive. So the thing that hurt me intensely over the first 5 years until I learned about it was not getting stuff right.
Mm.
You know, dealing with getting writing all over everything that you've done. You know, my managing principal used to write in a great big red Mont Blanc fountain pen across everything that I did, and I'd get it back and I'd almost be reduced to tears by the end of it. So I think you become accustomed to it and you learn that failure is the best form of learning, but for a number of years it just hurts. And not getting it, you know, you work really hard and you come up with an answer and your principal looks at you and said, "Oh, good argument, Tom, but no." And you go, "But I've just spent 7 hours of my life telling you something which I think is right."
Mm.
I think the other thing that hurts the most is I wasn't a great listener when I started off. I was analytically really clever. So I'd often come up with a solution which just wasn't what the facts were because I didn't spend enough time getting the facts right. So
You get a bit lost in the
I like law,
analysis.
Tom, you know. So
Yeah, I
law's
find that's
an
a problem for
easy place
me.
for me to disappear into. But the most important part of all law is getting the facts right because the law doesn't even touch it until the facts are described.
I find that is a temptation as well for young lawyers or grads. Like they want to prove themselves and they want to get so deep into the analysis, but sometimes it's not what is actually needed. I know I've fallen foul of that.
No, and look, I still do. Does that make sense? Every now and again, if I'm doing something with you, I want to show off a little bit or I want to show the skills. And you look at me and go, "But Andrew, that's not the case." And I go, "Maybe I should just listen to Tom a little bit longer."
Yeah, I have to pull him up. I have to pull him up a bit.
But you know, the important part about a lawyer is you don't have to wear a suit to be a lawyer. So you don't have to be, you don't have to appear clever to be a really, and I'd fit that as well. What you have to be is someone who listens intently, and once you know what the issue is, then has the intellect and desire to get a right outcome based on who the person or entity is, what their capability, what their risk appetite is, and what's good for them in the future, not just now. Wearing a suit doesn't make you do that. Coming up and being clever at a conference doesn't make you do it. It starts with listening.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Thank you, Andrew. Last question.
I've got another one.
What do you wish someone told you before you started your legal career?
What do I wish someone told me before I started? That it'd be so hard.
That it would be so hard.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't have changed my commitment to it, Tom, but it just hurt. I think the first 3 or 4 years particularly, I took chances that I didn't understand the replication of taking. I did a lot of appearance work early on. Nobody told me it would hurt me. And I don't think I'd prepared myself for when failure came along. And so, yeah, it knocked me around quite a bit. And my habit when something knocked me around was to go into myself and work twice as hard, demonstrate to the rest of the world that I was competent. Had I known it was hard, I wouldn't have done that dumb stuff. I would have gone, okay, I made a mistake. I would have gone and chatted to my leader and gone, how could I be better? But for me, it became a bit of self-absorption, and that self-absorption actually hurt, and it hurt for a long time. So knowing that it would be hard and you'd fail, and that failure is a method of learning and it's okay, if I had been told that, I would have had a much happier first 3 to 4 years. Many people would have given up, and most people do. 50% of people leave private practice within the first 5 years because of it.
Yeah.
Well, on that note.
You still here?
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you so much for joining us today.
No, thanks for
that was
having me
really
on.
insightful.
I love the show, by the way.
Yeah, thank you everyone for tuning in, and we hope to see you next time. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.